Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
What have we come to?
BC's healthcare crisis gets worse, forcing emergency rooms to close with no fix in sight.
It does nothing against smuggling. It doesn't do anything about tightening our borders.
And cracking down, the government's most ambitious attempt yet to restrict access to guns in Canada.
The setup, the way everything is displayed, it is very similar to what they would find back home.
Plus, becoming a lifeline for one of the world's largest diasporas of Indo-Fijian people.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. BC's healthcare crisis seems to be getting worse. The strain on staffing has forced the temporary closure of several emergency departments, leaving few options for people living in some small communities. And while the Premier is admitting to a problem, our Janella Hamilton is finding out there may be no quick fix.
Has become a challenge.
Isn't it terrifying when all of a sudden this weekend we see multiple ERs that are closed down?
She questions what that means for herself and almost 1 million British Columbians who don't have a family doctor and can't get into urgent care or a walk-in clinic.
Like, what have we come to that we actually have zero access to healthcare left at that point?
And today, while at the groundbreaking of the new Burnaby Hospital, Premier John Horgan also offered a dire warning, blaming COVID in part.
The system is vibrant, but the system is teetering, and we need to support it.
Over the weekend, 3 emergency rooms were forced to close because of staff shortages. Chetwynd, where the next closest hospital is about an hour away in Dawson Creek. Clearwater, which is a 100-kilometer drive to Kamloops for care. And Port McNeill, where the only option is a half-hour away. But BC nurses say while the pandemic has made staffing worse, it's always been a problem.
We've known for years that we were going to be facing a nursing shortage in particular. There's enough blame to go around for this current government and past government in terms of not planning for the situation.
She says while there's no quick fix, there are some things the government can do to help with recruitment and retention.
Considering hiring more non-nursing staff to be part of the healthcare team to complete some of those tasks that, frankly, you don't need a licensed practical nurse or a registered nurse to complete.
And while the province is promising to improve conditions for current staff and fast-track international nurses, it is asking the Prime Minister to send more money. But many worry it will simply be too little, too late. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
And now to a big development on firearms in this country. The federal government is proposing a national freeze on the sale of handguns in an effort to curb gun violence. As Julia Wong explains, the legislation also contains a red flag law for those who might be considered a threat to themselves or others.
For the Liberals, today's bill is an election promise fulfilled.
As we see gun violence continue to rise, it is our duty to keep taking action.
The legislation would increase penalties for gun smuggling and trafficking, introduce a red flag law so individuals considered a threat to themselves or others surrender firearms to police, and implement a national freeze on the sale, importation, and transfer of handguns. Some municipalities had wanted a handgun ban. Today, they got a freeze on handgun ownership.
In many discussions with those municipalities, it became clear that they didn't feel like they had the ability or the tools to do that. But we made a commitment to Canadians that we were going to take real, concrete steps to strengthen gun control.
Natalie Provost is a survivor of the 1989 Polytechnique shooting. She applauds the move toward a federal freeze.
We will have the same legislation for all Canadians. So I'm very happy for this very good first step today.
But this Edmonton gun store owner says the handgun freeze goes too far and will affect his livelihood.
That's about 40 to 60% of my business. So now I have to figure out if that is lost revenue. I have to figure out how we move forward, how we potentially grow the business, how I keep all my staff employed.
Guns rights groups are also concerned that legal gun owners are being unfairly punished.
You're assuming that stopping the legitimate lawful use of the handgun sports in some way is going to reduce crime and violence, because every credible expert on this topic knows it's not.
That's the CBC's Julia Wong reporting in Ottawa tonight. But while the government hopes today's bill will make things safer and save Canadian lives, BC gun owners are less confident. CBC Vancouver News at 11 host Dan Burrett joins us live now. Dan, what concerns are you hearing from them?
Well, at least one longtime gun owner and sports shooter says at first glance the proposed legislation does not include anything that's not already required by law, and he's concerned it won't do anything to crack down on violent crime in cities. He argues the vast majority of violent crime involving guns are handguns illegally smuggled into the country.
It does nothing against smuggling. It doesn't do anything about tightening our borders, which are, it's the reason gangs and violent criminals have firearms and access to firearms isn't because they've bought them legally and have a possession and acquisition certificate and have completed the 2 or 3 day Canadian firearm safety course. This has no.
Bancroft wants more money devoted to fighting violent crime, illegal gun smuggling, and support for mental health. One Vancouver psychiatrist agrees the open border with the U.S. is a challenge. When it comes to mental health concerns, though?
People who have mental health problems without access to guns may cause a bit of trouble, but they're not going to be committing mass murder.
Now, Smith says he doesn't necessarily think a handgun ban is necessary, but hopes this legislation in its final form includes red flag rules for some people who may be in crisis and have access to firearms. Anita?
Dan, a big development for sure. Thank you. Well, it's been more than 40 years since the last major upgrade to Burnaby Hospital, and today the province broke ground on a redevelopment plan. The project is expected to cost more than $1.3 billion, making it one of BC's largest healthcare investments. Among the upgrades, 2 new patient care towers, an expanded emergency room, and nearly 400 new beds. According to Health Minister Adrian Dix, the upgrades will mean better and faster care to people in Burnaby.
Our healthcare workers deserve this, and they deserve a Burnaby Hospital that is here for the next generation and the generation after that, providing health care and providing the best possible conditions for people to heal and get better and to live sometimes the most difficult moments of our lives, our last moments.
Construction today marks phase 1 of the redevelopment project, which is expected to be done by 2025, final completion in 2026. Well, dozens of airport security officers rallied outside YVR today, calling for better working conditions and better pay. The workers say they've faced public backlash because of increasingly long wait times at the airport. And as Isabel Regam tells us, they worry that anger is only going to get worse with the busy summer travel season.
Overworked and underpaid. It's the primary complaint that prompted these security screening workers to rally outside their workplace. But it wasn't a strike or a walkout. Everyone protesting today was not scheduled to work. But they said they were there for those who continue to struggle under what they call tough conditions.
They have limited breaks, health and safety issues, their frequent scheduling changes, wages that are below the standard now within the industry.
Passengers at airports across the country have seen longer than usual wait times at security in the last month. CATSA, the federal authority overseeing security, continues to point to a staffing shortage today and says it's in the process of hiring hundreds of people. Today, the lineups were manageable, but passengers came prepared.
Oh yeah, I heard it's worse in other provinces, but yeah, we just didn't want to be stressing out about not making our flight on time, so we gave ourselves lots of time.
Again, really didn't know. You hear some horror stories, of course, you know, in terms of the length of the lineup. So, you know, you come here hoping it's going to be okay.
Despite the blitz of new hires, the union argues the root causes of the shortage aren't being tackled.
It's nice that the federal government has taken these steps, and it's a step in the right direction. But without addressing the issues, you're not going to retain any people, and we're going to be only back to square one as the flight loads pick up in the summer.
And in the meantime, the union says screening officers on the front lines are getting the brunt of the anger from passengers, some who understandably get upset when they miss their flights over the waits. Still, strike action, he says, is not on the table as of right now. YVR confirms the rally did not cause any further delays throughout the day today. They are still advising passengers to arrive at least 2 hours early for domestic flights and 3 hours in advance for international flights. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Richmond.
And there's no end in sight to a 4-month transit strike in the Sea to Sky region. Workers there have rejected a tentative agreement reached on Friday. Mediators helped reach that agreement last week. The union says its members are upset about the wage gap between their region and Metro Vancouver's. Members of Unifor Local 114 have been on strike since January 29th, stopping transit service in Squamish, Whistler, and Pemberton for 4 months now. As more students get ready to start their summer jobs, WorkSafe BC says more than 7,000 young workers in the province were injured on the job last year. More than half of the injuries happened during the first 6 months of employment. They were most likely to occur in service sector jobs, followed by retail and wholesale, then construction. WorkSafe BC is reminding young workers they have the right to refuse unsafe jobs. Youth are also encouraged to speak up about workplace health and safety.
I would encourage any worker to sort of establish the safety dialogue early in the game, like, on day one. What do I need to do to stay safe on this job? Open up that conversation. Hopefully the employers are setting the tone and providing you with those opportunities too, but you want to protect yourself. So ask those questions, create, find the allies at your workplace if needed to, whether they're union reps, safety reps, co-workers, management, supervisors, anyone you feel comfortable with in bringing those concerns forward.
If a young person feels unsafe and that situation has not been resolved, WorkSafe BC says they can call the helpline and speak to a prevention officer. We're getting video tonight of an 18-year-old murder victim before he died. Homicide investigators hope the footage will help solve the crime. Manav Kinkar was reported missing on Thursday, and that same time, a body was found in Surrey's Hazelnut Meadows Park. Today, they've connected the two and say Kinkar is the victim. iHit says he arrived at Surrey Central via SkyTrain and may have gotten onto a bus. Officers are looking to speak with anyone who has information. Kinkar's death is believed to be targeted, but not connected to the ongoing Lower Mainland gang conflict. Well, if you're catching a BC ferry, you may soon be able to add a glass of beer or wine to your meal for purchase. BC Ferries has applied for a license to sell booze on board the 3 main routes between the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island. Certain staff will be able to sell the drinks, and customers will be allowed to purchase up to 2 drinks with a meal. A pilot program in the winter of 2020 showed no issues with alcohol on board. They expect to start selling drinks by the end of the summer. Now to the death of a popular rapper that's sending shockwaves through the Punjabi community in India and here in Canada, where he had his breakthrough. Last night in Surrey, there was an impromptu vigil to remember iconic musician Sidhu Moosewala. Dale Minukdok shows us how the star is being remembered by his millions of fans.
The video for Sidhu Moosewala's song Legend was shot on the roof of the Nelson Square parking garage in Brampton, just north of Toronto.
I think it symbolizes a perfect moment. He's going to go down as a legend.
Rupen Bardwaj, who directed 6 of the rapper's videos, including Legend, says Sidhu Moosewala has had a profound impact on his life.
We worked together for a span of maybe 8 months, and in that time, my career skyrocketed. Everything changed for me, and it set a path for me that I'm still on today.
Moosewala's path is especially relatable to those in Brampton. He arrived in 2016 after receiving an engineering degree in India.
He just came here as a student. He just do a struggle. He just composed his music.
He actually rose up
from Brampton. Like that's where most of his fame was from, and like it's a huge loss.
But his impact has stretched much further. This vigil was held Sunday in Surrey, BC.
Together we are here praying for his soul, that he rest in peace.
Canadian rap superstar Drake posted about Moosewala's death, and Canadian entertainer Lily Singh took to Instagram to talk about recent acts of violence, including the mass shootings in the United States.
I think today, for me personally, hearing about the murder of Sidhu Moosewala, who's an iconic Punjabi musician, just was like the final blow.
Some Indian news reports say Walla's father told police that his son had recently been receiving threats.
Opposition parties in the state of Punjab are accusing the ruling government of taking the singer's security away at a time when he was facing severe death threats from several gangsters in the country.
Police say the investigation is ongoing. Sidhu Moosewala was 28 years old. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Brampton.
Johanna Wagstaff is off today, so we check in with meteorologist Colette Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, it was kind of a slow start, gray, a little bit wet. We saw gradual improvement in most cases, but the temperature definitely below seasonal. We'll do a little bit better tomorrow, but we are going to have a spot where we're going to see those temperatures popping up. Now, through the overnight hours, still looking at a bit of that instability into the interior, and a bit of it is pushed further west, although somewhat isolated there with even that hail risk. But what we're seeing as we go into Tuesday, yes, we will have some cloud cover for even the lower mainland, a slight chance for some drizzle or a few showers, but we get into improving conditions and clearing through here, just some convective stuff further inland. That's as we get into the latter part of the day on Tuesday. So that is something to look forward to, because basically high pressure is going to be building in. It is going to be short-lived. There's another system coming in off the coast, but a good portion of Wednesday, a good portion of the province will be into some nicer conditions. We'll have more on what's coming after that coming up. We're at 13 degrees as we're heading into the later evening. 12 through the overnight to tomorrow morning. And there we are, 4 p.m. tomorrow, that late day clearing that we should be experiencing. So things getting better as we're heading into Tuesday night and into Wednesday.
All right, thanks, Colette. Well, before the Sony PlayStation and the Nintendo, there was Pachinko. If you grew up in the 70s, you might have been drawn to the unique Japanese pinball-like game. It was imported from Japan and sold in Vancouver department stores. Pachinkos were once a pretty hot item, and if you look for them, they're still around today. The CBC's Winston Sidhu tells the story of some passionate collectors.
Cindy Brodowski inherited this 1970s Pachinko machine from her dad, Canadian footballer Bas Nagel, after he passed away in 1997.
I always remember those kind of things with my dad more so, because if I was doing something with him, it usually revolved around a sport or some kind of competition. They're a little bit mesmerizing because there's all these sounds and pings and pongs, and just the sound of the little balls hitting the metal needles. There's quite a rhythm to it.
John Robertson first got hooked on Pachinko when he visited Japan several years ago.
We went to a Pachinko parlor in Tokyo, and it was the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life. It was like walking into the back end of a jet engine.
Pachinko repair and sales have been a part of his business since the 1970s. But how Pachinko arrived in Vancouver might surprise some.
These machines were cast-offs from Pachinko parlors in Japan back in the 70s. Woodward's and a couple of other companies like Woodward's were importing them and then selling to the general public because people were becoming interested in all the stuff in Japan. And that's how they ended up in my shop.
So how does it work?
So this is the handle. That's actually your hand rest. And they use that because their hand gets tired from doing this all day.
When you fire the ball here, the idea is you want to get it into one of these tulips, open and close, or if you can get it into these holes here, which open up tulips and give you more wins. So the idea is to try and get the ball to drop in a particular spot.
Collect the balls, and before you know it, you have got enough for some prizes. The more balls you got, the bigger the prize win. While Pachinko machines are gaming devices in Japan, in Canada, you can't bet on them. Just like pinball machines, they are strictly for entertainment.
But
So, I mean, pinball and pachinko, they're related. They're family.
Winston Sidhu, CBC News, Burnaby.
They make up a small but vibrant part of South Asians here, Indo-Fijians. Coming up, how one shop owner has become an important part of the community. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. After years of pandemic restrictions, it's getting easier to enter Canada by water. The Canada Border Services Agency has reopened more than 300 small harbors to international boats. Now, the move is expected to have a big effect on recreational boaters and tourism. And as Shayna Luck reports, for a port in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, it comes just in time.
Lunenburg is getting ready for the big influx of tourists. The historic port closed to international boaters when the pandemic hit. Now they're finally coming back.
Lunenburg is a tough place to drive to. We're right out on the end of the road, but if you're on a boat, it's on the way to everywhere.
Paul Baskett employs 7 people at his boatworks shop and typically does more than $1 million of business every year.
We have boats from Europe, boats from the United States. A lot of people cruise to Greenland and Newfoundland, and they come up from the Caribbean.
That all stopped in 2020 when the Canada Border Services Agency suspended service in the town.
You know, we were almost mothballed for a while because of it, but so was everybody else.
Before the pandemic, boaters entering Canada could do their paperwork here, but with small ports along the south shore of Nova Scotia closed, they had to travel to larger ports like Halifax, sometimes adding a day's worth of travel for small boats. About 20% of the business in this sail repair shop comes from the Northeast United States.
May is the month when people move their boats.
And the reopening of small ports could attract tourists in other parts of the country. McMillan is ready for them to arrive.
All the Great Lakes, you know, there's little places where Americans transit and go to and from Canada because same reason, looking for cruising, looking for, you know, a little more pristine, get away from the big cities.
A few hours' drive from Lunenburg, some Americans are already arriving. This is the first ferry from Maine in 3 years. Tourism operators are hoping those visitors will spread throughout the province and spend some money while they're here. Lunenburg is just one of more than 300 border services sites reopening across the country. About 50 are in Atlantic Canada and the West. Most of the rest are in Ontario. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lunenburg.
A specialty grocer in Surrey has been serving one of the world's largest diasporas of Indo-Fijian people for more than 3 decades. In this segment of a series highlighting Asian Canadian business owners for Asian Heritage Month, meet Anita Kumar, owner of Indo-Fiji Supermarket.
Customers, when they come in, they have a sense of pride when they walk into the store to see that they can get what they want, what they're used to from back home. They're able to eat and live the same way. They're able to blend into the community otherwise, but at least at home, they're themselves.
Hi, Vanita.
Hi,
I'm
Michelle.
Nice to meet you.
Same here.
Hi, Ajay. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
For many Indo-Fijians in the Lower Mainland, Vinita Kumar's store feels like home.
We've been in business for over 30 years, believe it or not.
Wow, that's a long time.
It is, it is. I myself sometimes feel like, wow, have we been here that long? We carry a lot of the Indian produce, vegetables, Fijian produce, and spices. A lot of religious items too. A lot of people, when they come in first time, they're so excited. To a person that is from Fiji, it reminds them of Fiji. The smell, just the sight, because I think the store reminds them of back home, the setup, the way everything is displayed. It is very similar to what they would find back home.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the Philippines, and I moved here when I was 12 years old, and just this weekend, I went to a Filipino grocery store, and I was like a kid in a candy store, just picking things up.
Imagine.
Yes, and I remember this when I was a kid in the Philippines, and I'm sure that's so much a part of the experience for people coming here.
Oh, yes, yes. So a lot of parents have been bringing the kids right from when they were little.
Yeah.
And now those kids have grown up, have their children of their own, they come in with them. So it's helping us grow, it's bringing them closer to their heritage. They get so excited when they see all the snack products, especially things like the bongo, the twisties, the cheesy snacks from Fiji.
The bongos and the twisties, we're gonna have to try those.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So tell me why the twisties are your favorites.
So growing up, whenever my mom came home from work, so she would bring this for me. I would wait for her to come because after school, my mom used to come around 4:30, and she would come with a couple packets of twisties.
They're more than just snacks. They're little reminders of where Vinita and her family have come from and where they are today.
And so here we have breakfast crackers.
So they were more of a staple for breakfast. Growing up, like cereal wasn't available as abundantly as it is now back home. So then we would break them up and throw it into our tea, eat it with a spoon just like you had cereal. And I'm sure you'd like to try some of this today.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I can imagine people having this first thing in the morning as they start their day. Oh my goodness, that is so comforting.
Yeah.
Vinita and Ajay took over the store over 30 years ago in Vancouver. Now, it has expanded to Surrey, which has one of Canada's largest Indo-Fijian diasporas.
When we first moved from Fiji, my husband and I, in the early 90s, is when we saw an opportunity on Victoria Drive. So there were an elderly couple that were running a store by the same name, Indo-Fiji. They were ready to retire. It was a perfect opportunity for us to step in, and the rest is history, you see.
Vinita's grandfather moved to Fiji from India in the 1930s, searching for new opportunities. This was decades after the first wave of Indian people were brought to the island by the British as indentured laborers in the late 1800s. Since then, a distinct Indo-Fijian identity, food, traditions, and language was formed, elements that are reflected in Vinita's business today.
Well, I know that I owe it to all my customers. I mean, a lot of it was hard work, but without them, the hard work doesn't really matter. And I'm glad that we were able to come this far.
What do people need to learn about the Indo-Fijian community here in British Columbia?
That they have been here for a long time too. They've grown with Surrey in a way. They've brought with them the Indian heritage, whatever they learned in Fiji, and here they're embracing the Canadian culture too.
A slew of recommendations today about how to tackle sexual misconduct in Canada's military. The call for change next.
if we do have to take anybody off the road, there shouldn't be any problem with them getting service or parts.
Nearly 100 people fill this room: police officers, provincial motor vehicle inspectors, immigration officers, and federal investigators attend a pre-roadblock briefing.
We will try and check as many private vehicles as we can. Our main focus is still going to be the commercial transport aspect, but knowing the volumes that are going through that area highway, it's going to be busy.
Vehicles are corralled at Kamloops way stations to be checked for safety problems that could cost lives. Defects include cracked trailer frames, which must be repaired immediately.
What do you think of these roadblocks?
They're a little bit of a hassle for us. We've got priority loads, but out here in the mountains, you gotta have everything up to snubs.
It doesn't leave Kamloops till the repairs are done.
Well, it'll be back up here tonight.
This trucker will repair a minor steering defect that could cause problems down the road.
The only reason we're going to change it because I'm going stateside with it. To California. And California won't allow it. So it's a convenience and it's good?
Well, it's an inconvenience, but it's a good, it's got to be done. Somebody's got to do it.
Okay, left lane.
This time, police are pulling over more passenger vehicles than highway trucks.
Well, I'm not going to let you drive it from here.
No?
No.
No, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're finding vehicles without brakes, defective brakes, vehicles that have other equipment failures such as lights, brake lights, windshield wipers, other things that people just seem to neglect to fix.
Just follow me up over here, okay?
Okay, the defects we found in the vehicle with the no insurance, the fact that you have no lights whatsoever, no horn, no wipers, the vehicle's going to have to be towed.
See the tires on them?
Yes. Yeah.
The air is showing through.
It's pretty scary sometimes. Yeah.
Local mechanic Dick Sims has come to the roadblocks to see how the industry is doing.
Doing inspections for a living, I think it's good that we don't have a whole parking lot full of trucks here. It shows that it's improved from what it did 3 or 4 years ago when it first started.
Yet Kamloops is the scene of one of the worst accidents involving a highway tractor-trailer unit in British Columbia's history.
That will never go away. I was there that day and I saw it, and I can just close my eyes and visualize it like it was yesterday. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and didn't have enough brakes. It changed my outlook on what we do here as far as the kind of things that are going on. I'm encouraged by what I see.
Well, that's all it needs, actually.
While the general condition of commercial vehicles has come a long way, almost every passenger vehicle checked had defects, and some were outright condemned by the roadside. Alan Edwards, CBC News, Kamloops.
A damning new report calls on the Canadian military to stop investigating sexual assault cases within its own ranks, instead handing over the files to civilian police and courts outside the military system. The recommendations from former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour come after the Canadian Armed Forces saw an unprecedented number of senior leaders face allegations.
The CAF should let others do what they can do better.
A scathing indictment of the military's handling of sexual offenses.
What's happening in the military system is not sustainable.
Former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour's report wide-ranging. It found that since the military started handling sexual offenses internally in 1998, it's done more harm than good.
I think it will be better handled. It will have greater impact, more equity for victims if all this is done in the civilian system.
Arbour also recommended sexual harassment cases be exclusively handled by civilian organizations, and is calling for the military to seriously consider the future of military colleges, where sexual misconduct is rampant.
I accept Madame Arbour's final report in its entirety.
The defense minister says efforts are already underway to move forward on 17 of the 48 recommendations.
The remainder of the recommendations I agree with, and I'm needing my department and the Canadian Armed Forces to provide me with the path forward.
The Chief of Defense Staff says the path must be different this time.
Perhaps what has happened in the past is we've been too defensive when we've had an external set of eyes on us.
Former Navy member Dawn McEmoyle went public on Maclean's in 1998 about the Navy's failure to properly handle her sexual assault case. She wants to finally see real change.
I have to hold hope in my heart because that's the only thing that keeps me going, that something will come of this. But, you know, in a year's time, it'll be 25 years since I was on Maclean.
Arbour said she wants to know within the next year what recommendations the military is not moving forward with. She says there are hundreds of past recommendations from previous reviews that are still in limbo, and she wants decisive action here. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
In Uvalde, Texas, visitations got underway today for some of the 21 victims of last week's mass shooting at an elementary school. 6 days after the attack, mourners prayed at a makeshift memorial as nearby family and friends gathered for two 10-year-old girls. They were among 19 fourth graders killed in the mass shooting. 2 teachers are also dead. After visiting Uvalde yesterday, U.S. President Joe Biden said today he'd keep pressing for change.
The pain is palpable, and I think a lot of it's unnecessary. So I'm going to continue to push, and we'll see how this works.
The first of the victims' funerals are set for tomorrow. That's exactly 1 week after the attack. Well, Russian and Ukrainian soldiers are fighting street by street, block by block in a key city in the Donbass region. Ukrainian officials say that occupying forces have destroyed all the critical infrastructure in Severodonetsk. The city has become an important target in Russia's renewed offensive in the eastern Donbass region. A French journalist was killed today after a vehicle used for civilian evacuations was hit by shelling near the city. During a visit to Kyiv, France's foreign minister demanded a full investigation into the incident. With the papal visit to Canada just 2 months away, some residential school survivors are looking for more input in the planning process. As the CBC's Olivia Stefanovic explains, a key priority is getting another stop on the Pope's itinerary.
Kenneth Young is on a mission to make sure the concerns of residential school survivors are heard.
The survivors didn't agree to for the Pope to go to Iqaluit, Quebec City, and Edmonton.
He says he's going to press Canadian Catholic bishops to add at least one more stop on the Pope's trip.
The bishops should have consulted the survivors, and that the Pope should have been asked to visit Kamloops.
That's where national reckoning began 1 year ago, at the site of a former Catholic-run residential school. The discovery of what are believed to be unmarked graves of children.
The Catholic Church, the bishops, must make a choice of real conciliation.
Perché permette di non vanificare la memoria.
Other survivors want a say in what's in the expected papal apology on Canadian soil.
An apology without substance is not acceptable.
Nel chiedervi scusa.
The Pope is expected to go further from his statement at the Vatican when he said sorry for the conduct of some church members.
Survivors are presenting an invitation and a challenge.
Archbishop Don Boland of Regina is one of just a handful of Canadian bishops who've committed to attending this week's meeting.
I encourage others in the church and in society more broadly to take up that invitation to engage personally and directly with survivors.
But survivors say talk must be followed by action.
There's so much work that has to be undertaken to right the many wrongs that were inflicted on our people.
Survivors say they plan to ask the bishops to sign a covenant, promising to work together to address their concerns, both before the Pope's visit and after. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours and is available to anyone who is impacted. A shocking video showing 3 kids narrowly escaping death walking along train tracks. Toronto Public Transit has released the video as a lesson to kids and adults about the dangers of trespassing on train tracks. Ali Chiasson has more on the video and the reaction.
Captured on the front camera of a moving GO train. You see on the bottom right of the screen one person on the adjacent tracks, then just ahead, 2 others running. One crosses to the other tracks. The other person throws themselves against the railing on the side, just narrowly escaping the moving train. It's all the more heart-stopping, knowing that this is along the Humber River rail bridge with about a 30-meter drop below.
Normally we can't release these close call videos because the people don't survive.
We should note that Anne-Marie Aikens of Metrolinx lost her voice today after doing so many interviews about this. She says they're determined to get the message out about the dangers of trespassing on train tracks. They don't know who these kids are, but
our appeal is to their parents, not to be punitive to these young kids, and to all parents to talk to their kids and impress upon them just how terribly dangerous it is to walk on the tracks anytime.
Aikens says people often trespass on rail tracks, and it's an extremely dangerous problem. Unlike during the height of the pandemic when rail lines were less busy, trains are back up and running on their full schedules. It's reckless and dangerous to assume that you know when a train is coming, when so often it's too late and someone gets struck.
Because of the weight of the train, it took a kilometer to stop, you know. It just would have been tragedy.
The fact that there's a pedestrian bridge right there as well, puzzling.
I guess it's, I think it's thrill-seeking.
Thrill-seeking, a shortcut, whatever the reason, trespassing on train tracks can land you with a $5,000 fine. The ultimate penalty is paying with your life. Thankfully, these kids lived, and this video now serves as a lesson in the dangers of walking along train tracks.
So Metrolinx has no intention of fining these kids or their parents. This is all about just deterring people from ever trying to trespass along train tracks. And you would be surprised at how often this happens. People are actually spotted walking along that very rail corridor today. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Rolling out the red carpet. Coming up, how the UK is prepping for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And at 6:41, a live look at Victoria from the Swans Hotel tonight. Still plenty of clouds in the sky, but we are set for a dry day. Colette Kennedy will be here with the details next.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
The strongest hurricane on record to hit the eastern Pacific in May has been battering southern Mexico. Hurricane Agatha brought torrential rains and the threat of flooding to the areas in the state of Oaxaca. The Category 2 storm is the first hurricane in the eastern Pacific this year. It's expected to dissipate by tomorrow night. Well, things are looking a lot different here, that is for sure. Time now to check in with meteorologist Colette Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, just kind of looking at what we can expect in the next little while. I'm sure kind of after today, especially hoping for a bit of a warm up. We will see one day where the temperature actually kind of spikes above seasonal as we look at the next several. So we do have some instability through the overnight and into tomorrow morning. That slight chance for some showers for the lower mainland, but late tomorrow, as we get to Wednesday as well, we will get into some clearing. So there's got to be some sunshine in there, and it is Wednesday. That's going to be the day where those temperatures start to come up. Hey, short-lived temperature bump, but most, I think, will take it. And we'll look at what those readings are actually going to be like. As we continue through the overnight hours, we do see some of that activity into the interior kind of winding down. A slight risk into tomorrow morning, even for the metro area, about a 30% chance for a few light showers in here. But certainly we'll keep some of the cloud cover. But then as this broad ridge of high pressure builds in and takes over the province, we will get into clearing. You can see it through the lower mainland, up the Sunshine Coast. Yes, there's still some convective stuff inland, but generally things really improve Wednesday. It just may not last the entire day, because by the time we get to Wednesday evening, you're going to watch things starting to change up again. And Wednesday night, we'll see more rain pushing in across the island and then coming towards the metro area as we get into Thursday. So the pattern will change again. I really want you to kind of look forward to that timeline from Tuesday, tomorrow late in through Wednesday. There'll be some good activity there, some good weather for outdoor activity. Okay, your highs for tomorrow, just having a look at those. Hey, better than today, but in some cases still a little below seasonal. But look at Wednesday. I mean, this is 22, and we're talking inland, likely mid-20s. After that, with some of that wet weather coming back and that pattern changing back, you will at least notice with the daytime highs anyway that the temperature is going back kind of to normal, so they'll be seasonal. So for tomorrow, it'll still be even a little bit warmer inland, say 22, and like I said, hey, Wednesday, that hump day, that's looking like a good one, if maybe some of the others were going to be needing that umbrella around.
All right, it'll be handy. Thanks, Colette. Well, the UK is preparing to mark Queen Elizabeth's 70th year on the throne. The celebrations of 96-year-old monarch's Platinum Jubilee will start Thursday and go on until Sunday. One noteworthy project is the transformation of the moat around the iconic Tower of London into a flower garden. Salima Shivji has the details.
Here at the Tower of London, one of the many tributes to the Queen that are popping up all over the country in preparation for her Platinum Jubilee. The celebrations this week really on a scale that is astonishing. Some 1,800 official events. There are going to be thousands of street parties, official pageantry to mark something that this country has never seen. Queen Elizabeth II, of course, the first British monarch to make it to 70 years on the throne. This is the moat of the Tower of London, of the fortress that was previously only mown lawn and has been since the mid-1800s, now being turned into what's being called a super bloom, a giant garden with an evolving rotation of flowers, basically meant to bloom at different periods of the summer. If you look at it now, though, it doesn't look so super, perhaps Mother Nature not cooperating as much as organizers had hoped, despite their best efforts.
So although we brought in engineered topsoil, we had all the best experts helping us plant the seeds. The weather wasn't collaborating with us quite as we wanted to. It was a very cold and dry April here in London. Only sort of 36% of the rainfall that you'd expect fell, so we had to water the seeds along, and the wind whipping off the Thames made it quite dry as well.
So they're slightly off schedule, about a couple of weeks delayed in terms of timing, but the organizers do say this garden is meant to be here all summer for people to enjoy this tribute to the Queen. A little bit of uncertainty in terms of the garden, as well as some uncertainty for the celebrations later this week. We do know that the Queen has had some mobility issues. She has been changing and missing some engagements. The Queen did spend the weekend up in Scotland at Balmoral to have a bit of a rest ahead of the intensity of the Jubilee celebrations this week. To have a bit of rest before the fun starts. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
A restaurant that caters to the four-legged friends in your life. How a business bow-wowed to the pressure and is serving up the perfect meal. Next.
This is a treasure of mine. This is the old analog clock from the Memorial Stadium. I bought it at the auction when they were selling things when the stadium closed in 2001, and I was lucky enough to get it. In 2020, I retired, and just looking around and thinking about the next chapter in my life, I always thought about that clock. What's going to happen to that clock? And so I started my outreach. Sent a few emails, made a few phone calls, just to see if I could get somebody that had as much love for this thing as I did that would take it and give it a new home. I'm so happy you guys are here.
We saw it on the CBC article, and then when I got into the office, I said, well, I'm going to try to find her, because she was more than happy to donate it here to the rooms.
Oh my God, I think it's the best place ever.
So we wanted to collect the clock from Memorial Stadium because we thought it would really tell the history of sporting in Newfoundland and Labrador, and tell the history of the Memorial Stadium, which was such a big part of our collective history. You know, it's just it's in the living memory of Newfoundland and Labradorians. So the clock is going to go right up there, right next to the cart. This whole area here, we have about St. John's, and over in this corner here we have sporting history. So there we have the Boyle Trophy, which is a famous hockey trophy. So it makes sense that we're going to put it right above there and lit up next to the White Way window, which is a stained glass window from a house in St. John's, and the Lawler meat cart. Yeah, go.
Really happy that the Rooms is going to be its new home. Can't wait. But it's going to be an empty spot in my basement. I just can't believe that the Rooms has agreed to take it. I'm so excited for it. And I get to go and visit it whenever I want to.
So if you ever want to donate anything to the Rooms in the history collection, you would contact myself, Maureen Peters, and my email is mpeters@therooms.ca. That's mpeters@therooms.ca.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. On June 15th, support immigrant entrepreneurs with CBC Vancouver's Anita Bathe at the Surrey Board of Trade's online entrepreneur showcase. Register today at businessinsurrey.com. And CBC Vancouver is a proud returning media partner of the Talking Stick Festival, June 12th to July 3rd. Enjoy and celebrate Indigenous art, dance, theatre, film, and more. Get tickets and learn more at fullcircle.ca.
A woman in Dubai has opened a cafe that serves food to dogs and cats. And given the skyrocketing demand, some say she isn't barking up the wrong tree.
I just am making this kind of treats when they are puppy. And I got some of great feedback. My friends like, wow, it looks like a real meal and like this. And then one day I was thinking like there is a many place for humans restaurant, and that's like why there is no restaurant for dogs. So okay, let's make it one for them, and then and that is happy birthday here.
Pet cafes, and I thought this is a new concept. I haven't heard of this before. I'd really like to go, and I find it's really relaxing. The food looks amazing. I can't believe that it is so nutritionally good. And it's exactly the same as human food, where if you have a problem with your pet that can't have something specific, then you can tailor it so that they can enjoy it here.
I really like this place because the food is made by a nutritionist, and I think that's really good. And it's not like a treat, it's a full meal, and it's always a different menu every day.
I just love them with the unconditional love. I'm getting emotional. Yeah, so they were babies.
I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I was just in a bakery in my neighborhood the other day, and they are now selling homemade dog treats as well. So I think it's going to happen more. All right, if spending a night behind bars doesn't really scream home sweet home, how about a lifetime? One family near Toronto purchased an old police station and turned it into a home, but soon it's going to be up for sale. Now, the family did some renovations, but as Talia Ritchie shows us, some of that old police station vibe certainly remains.
So we're going to take you on a little home tour in Port Hope today, but this isn't exactly your average house tour. Tell us why that is.
Oh, because this was my wife's idea. We bought the town's old police station and decided to move in. This building is 6,000 square feet, so it is 3 times the size of our last place.
Wow.
These are the mailboxes of the original police officers. We just left them there. Most of those officers are still working for our town, so they're still here.
Further down, there's some evidence ones and stuff, and one of them was locked and it said DNA, and the kids were playing around the one day and they were just fishing in there and they found some DNA package still sealed in there. We had to call the police and be like,
Yeah, they came and picked it up right away. So we're looking at that vault. That vault was the evidence room. The combination, by the way, is extremely difficult to get. It takes me several tries each time, and the only people who know it, as far as we know, are us and the police chief. Oh man, it's such a heavy door.
And how much did this room come in handy during the pandemic?
So much. It was a great place to send the kids to burn off steam. They'd come here and play, and not only that, but because it's on the other side from where the living stuff is, we didn't have to hear them.
Did you end up often being the hosting house?
Yeah, but we had the room, and that's something we really wanted for our kids growing up. I always wanted to be the house that the kids came to hang out at, so.
For me, growing up, I always saw the police station like it was on my bus route, and I always see like, oh, there's policemen in there, you know, and I was really young. And I always wondered what was going on in it, and I never thought I'd be living in it.
This was the police chief's office, and now it's our bedroom. It is the biggest room in the house.
What were some of your favorite memories living in this house?
I loved watching movies in this room. The sound is really good.
The screen is huge.
Should we head down to the cells?
Sounds great. My first reaction was, we need to bleach every square inch of that room. And we did.
Which you did.
This is the first place everybody comes and takes pictures, every single one of them.
So soon this won't be your home anymore. What would your message be to the next owners if someone does decide to make it a home?
My message to the next owner, oh, take care of it. Enjoy it, because you won't have it forever. And wow, it's so much fun to have such a great space to play in.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Port Hope.
Okay, I don't know if any other story is going to top that one this week. All right. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. We'll see you tomorrow.